Alright, Section C, steel car repairs. Almost all the repair work on the steel equipment is done at the larger facilities because the small repair points have no facilities for this kind of work. Machinery and tools. In making the repairs to all the steel cars of the metal parts of the composite and other cars of the Carmen use the following machinery tools, which are usually furnished by the company and replaced by the company when lost or worn out or broken. Alright, a large fuel oil furnace for the purpose of the heating of the smaller bent parts with a straightening number of straightening tables, the flat steel tables at a height of about 8 inches from the floor on which the parts are laid while straightening. Various presses operated by an air cylinder for the straightening of the parts and such as the dump doors, etc. Press made of large beam shod with an iron operated with a straightening table with the aid of the two air cylinder, one at each end of the beam with the air. When the air is applied to the air cylinder, force with the beam down with the table, straightening any of the metal materials inserted between the beam and the table. The various sizes and the shape of the block of the irons are used in some of the work of the conjunction with the press. Spacing tables. Punching press will have many as 10 to 12 heads punching with the number of the holes on the metal sheet at once. Drill pressers for the large of the small work. Rivet machinery is operated with a large air cylinder with a large steel couplers, rivets 1/8 inch, 1 1/4 inch. Machinery, tools, and portable equipment. Blowtorches are used with the heat for the parts not removed from the car and parts with the size of the in which it does not emit into the fuel oil furnace. Hand forges, coal burning, riveting heating furnaces operated by fuel oil and compressed air. Aero drill machines, large, small, various sizes of drills from the 5/8 inch to 1.5 inch. Reamers on small, same size as one of the riveting cutting gun and 3 chisels from the described here and after. Pneumatic hammers for driving rivet the drawbar, pinch bar with the 2 longitudinal chisel bar, the chipping of the hammers and used in cut and trimming plates and casting, split bars and dolly bars, bars of jaws at one end of each of the straightening. Tongs are used in hand and hot material rivets of sledgehammers of 4, 6, 8, and 10 pounds. Straight and backing hammers 4, 6, 8 pounds. These hammers have a flat, wide face which when fit straight and is laid against the hot metal in the hammer struck with a sledge. The hand chisel of the hammer shall be shaped chisel equipped with a long handle with struck with a sledge and cutting off the rivet screw and ratchet jackets of the pole jacket and chains, drift pins used with lining of the matching holes in the part being applied with the car, usually the holding part of the when raising into the position as they can be quickly inserted into the pair of holes, sustaining the weight of the part being lifted on or held in place. Holding onto the rivets, heavy bar followed on the end of the hold of the rivet, and while men with the air hammer fashion heads on either end of the rivet, Old man on bar and a number of flat pieces having the poles at the one end of the side to emit the bar. These flat pieces can be adjusted with the normal number of the heights on the bar and are used generally to aid in holding the heavy air drills. On flat pieces of the bar is used with an anchoring the other side as against the top of the drill. A few turns of the wheel at the top of the air drill wedges it against the work. In the operation of riveting, heating furnace, the blowtorch, air drill machines, riveting, cutting guns, air hammers, these carmen use compressed air and oil hoses in connection. The carmen must have knowledge of the setting up, the adjusting, cleaning, and oil of all of these tools and machines. The mechanic himself responsible for seeing that these machines and tools are used in good condition. Their air tools attachments are usually kept in the tool room over the night. The carman keeps all the simple tools, such as the sledges, bars, etc., in the toolbox near the repair of the track. The carman generally sharpens his own chisel other than cutting tools. Various materials. Materials used in the steel car repairs including the steel sheet, steel rod, steel casting sheet, rivet spring, forging, malleable irons, grab iron, casting, bolt, washers, and a greater variety of the pressed steel shape. As in repair wooden equipment, the carman must know the shape of the size of the makes of the different parts with which go with the makeup of the great many of the type of the car, steel and part of the steel construction of equipment following and rapidly taking the place of the equipment of the wooden construction. All of these tremendous number of the parts and the type of the wood of the equipment have and their counterpart in the steel and composite cars, and it's impossible in the exposition of any of the sizes to list any of the major part of the different sizes, weights, and shapes that enter into the car construction of the steel and part steel equipment repaired by carmen. Of repairs. The carman must repair splice sills and straighten the steel underframes of the boxcars, coal cars, hopper cars, and sand cars, flat cars, stock cars, fruit cars, automobile cars, furniture cars, and cabooses. Some of the cars have 5, 6, 7, 8 steel sills. Some have only a steel center sill, and others have steel bolsters and draft arms. The Carmen skills is needed to repair the steel frame box of the gondola cars in which the substructure of the part with the seal of the part door with the box of the car with the post brace of the car line purliners and plates are steel and the flooring of the side and end of the planks are wood. Alright, foreign car repair. The carman not only must be familiar with and able to repair the steel equipment that is on his own road, but also be able to repair all types of foreign cars. The foreign cars sometimes come to the shop for repairs in very badly condition, sometimes on their own trucks, and some conditions loaded in another car. Figure 18 shows the AB and A steel gondola being rebuilt by the CNW Carmen without aiding the blueprints. The remainder of the cars are so badly damaged that the twisted and mixed up with the owners of the request for the furnace of the blueprints for the entire of the car with the reconstructed again, but there are times of which one end of each for the side of the steel car is practically destroyed. Missing end of the car must be making his measure for the corresponding parts for the other side of the end in order the parts beneath may be ordered correctly. Operation performed in repairing steel equipment. When steels are received at the shop for repairs, it is generally found that along with many of the other defects that exist, part of the drafting rigging are broken or missing. Also, the grab iron sill steps, brake shafts, or other safety appliances are broken or missing. On boxcars where the roof is invariable, worn through, or leaky, or on a gondola car with the floors or sills or dump doors are worn and rusted. Then the door closing mechanism is found to be bent, rusted, and imperative. It is sometimes required for the use of the accelerating cutting torch to extricate. Cars are received with varying degrees of the damage due to the brakes, collision, cornering, and the sideswiping, etc. These times are when the car superstructure is bent almost down with the underframe. The first step in the repairing of the steel car is the removal by cutting off the parts of it is to be renewed with the part with the straightening when off the car. This is done by using a sledge and a hand chisel. The chisel is placed against the widest part of the rivet handle within the stuck with a sledge and repeated with the blows, cuts, and breaking it off. The punch is placed against its cutting rivet struck with the sledge driving out of the hole. Loosening the rivets is especially difficult to cut, but then when the rivets are tightly, the stroke of the sledge and unhappy with the carman can cut rivets with amazing skill and rapidly. The use of the rivet cutting gun is becoming the general necessity with the carman's acquiring skills and using it. The use of the riveting cutting gun. The riveting cutting gun is the tool cylindrical in structure and about 4 feet in length. When the cutting of the chisel is punched into something. Figure 19, cutting the rivets from the side of the gondola car. Note that the chisel must be held. With longer than the attachment varying length of 8 to 20 inches, the cylinder contains a piston which works up and down in the cylinder with a 41-inch stroke propelled with the compressed air admitted with the suddenly and fully volume with the operation on the valve at the one end of the gun. The opposite end of the gun is the socket with the inserting of the cutting chisel. How the gun operates. When the mechanical opens the valve with the pressure of the air force with the plunger out of the full length of the cylinder where it strikes the chisel of the plunger, having the structure on the chisel with the chisel in the turn of having the struck with the rivet. When there is a recoil, the plunger comes back in the first position. When the position reaches the end of the stroke, part of the hole of the cylinder becomes the opening, releasing the air pressure after the mechanic is shut off the operating valve at the same time with the moderate pressure of the air given with automatically to one end of the piston through the steel tube with one side of the gun forces the piston back into the position at the valve end of the gun. It must be understood that this is the respective of the valve operator is required to open and shut the valve with each for the stroke of the chisel, and the respective differs from the use of the air hammer where it mechanically operating and simple keeps the valve open, and strokes for the hammer are regulated automatically. Cutting off rivets. The cutting of the rivets of one mechanical hold the chisel directly in and blows. It must be knowledge of the angle at which the chisel must be placed against the rivet held head to secure the best and quickest results. Mechanical operating the valve must be careful with watch the mechanic who is directed with the chisel in so much as the gunning operated without the chisel being against the rivet. The chisel will fly out and cause plausible injury. If the air valve is operated too fast, the piston inside of the gun will not have sufficient time to return entirely into the position, which would mean irregularity in strength of the stroke and corresponding difficulty in handling of the chisel by the mechanic who directs it. An ordinary working condition in the gun makes approximately 30 to 40 strokes per minute, which requires an operator to be quick as well as accurate. To get the utmost efficiency from the use of the gun, the man operating the valve has to know how many finished strokes can be given to a chisel under the variety of the conditions that attend to use. In the large shop, the air pressure for the operation will vary at times from 30 pounds to 90 pounds according to the amount of compressed air being used on the work. According with the efficiency of the air compressor machinery, which is the times in poor working condition. In cold weather, the compressed air has more water in it and makes the action of the gun somewhat less powerful. However, it could be in cold weather. Figure 20 shows the cutting off of the end of the door roller castings. Steel rivets are very hard and brittle when the smaller ones can be cut with one-stroke gun, whereas warm weather, especially with the steel car exposed with the hot sunshine, the rivets are softer and tougher and require more strokes to cut. And the manner in which all these conditions affect the operation of the riveting and cutting gun must be known as by the mechanic directing the chisel mechanic operating the valve. It is clear, therefore, that the work cannot be done without experience, but requires the real mechanical skill. Danger of flying rivets. The element of the danger is presenting with the cutting of the rivet of the gun. The gun will cut the 5/8 of an inch rivet with about 2 strokes, which gives some of the idea of the power of the machine. The stroke that is an improper time will cause the chisel to fly out, and pro movement is resisted in a proper angle. The chisel is liable to break with the rivet's head. If it is cut from the side of the car, they fly through the air with a high speed from a distance of sometimes 30 feet. These rivet heads weigh from 1/2 to 1 ounce with the sharp jagged edges, producing an ugly wound if they are striking a person. Sometimes a piece of the burlap or broom is held over the rivet to prevent the head from flying off, but this is service requires assignment with the fourth man to run the gun crew, but this generally is not done. It may be further stated that if there is another man blanketing these rivets, it would be hampered and slow down the work considerably. Figure 21 shows removing the draft gear rivets, not position of the mechanical directing chisel. Chisel's used. The chisels used with the working gun must necessarily be very with a good steel with the rigors of the service requiring them to be sharpened frequently, sometimes every hour. This is done by the mechanics themselves or sometimes by the tool room at the attendant. There are usually the 3 chisels for each of the gun in order to eliminate delay due to the breakage of the resharpening punching of the rivets. After the head of the rivets have all been cut off with the punching and inserted with the socket gun into place for the chisel, with the machine is then used to punch the rivets out of their holes. This requires much and if not more than skill than the actuating tool of the rivet. Because of the use of the gun, it is so powerful the punch will not only knock out the cut of the rivet out of the sometimes follow through and stick in the hole with that held the rivet. The stroke is given through the punch by the gun would probably enlarge the hole. Unskilled mechanic on the job of this kind would spend most of the time trying to extricate the punch from the rivet holes. No 2 rivets require the same punch power to remove it from the hole. The mechanics operating with the valve must be able to judge these from result of the first stroke, how much of the power must be exercised to remove the rivet and not allow the punch to fall into the rivet hole become fastened tightly. In other words, mechanical operating with the valve tells the feeling of the resistance given with the rivet to the first the stroke of the punch, how much more power should be given to the second stroke in order to drive out the rivet without driving the punch into the hole. Stroke from the gun is so rapidly decision is made and instantly, so the fastest and practically instinctively, which means that the only long experience with the type of the work enable the man to make such rapid judgment and acts upon it accurately. Gun operating is tiring work. The working operating gun is hard to extinguish the light of these guns with a chisel with a weight of 60 pounds. Other type of the weight is about 90 pounds. The weight is added by the portion of the air hose of the coupling that does not rest of the ground with the valve operator with the helper of support of the one end of the gun with the man with the chisel directs. It blows and also supports his end of the gun. The supporting end of the support of the weight and the direction of the chisel is so tiring with the valve operator and the man chisel relieve each of the changing position from the time to time. Also variation of the gun is operation of the danger for the flying rivet heads when broken chisel becomes work decidedly unattractively. Straightening. After cutting off all the necessary parts of the Carmen conveyed to the one of the requiring tightening. Straightening of the straightening table to where it's reshaped after the heating of the blowtorch. The blowtorch is cylindrical mat with about 10 inches long and 4 inches in diameter. 2 narrow pipes and 6 foot long are attached to one of the cylinder, one of which ejects the steady flow of the oil, the other compressed air into it. About 30 feet of this hose conveys the oil and air to each of the pipe. The valve to each pipe near the cylinder for regulation flows with the oil in the air. The oil will ignite blow by the air caused by the cylinder to eject the flame against the part of the heated. Heating bent parts. In order to concentrate the flame of the part that is being heated with the Carmen, set up with the screen with the sheet with the iron with the tin sheet with the hole with the flame with the torch around the parts being heated, but also serve the spread of the flame over the greater surface. The mechanic must know that how to adjust the screen in order to create the spread of the flame suitable for the size and thickness of the part heated, and also keep it within the limits of efficiency of the torch. When the part is sufficiently heated to be workable, it is straightened by strokes of sledgehammers, and then it uses the air pressure. The mechanics also use the varied sizes of the split bars to grasp the edge of the parting of the bending. Rivet tongues are also used with the aid of the handling of the hot metal. In straightening these parts, the care must be taken to overheat them, because with that straightening, the metal will be liable to spread to contract to the cause of the humping thick spots with the corresponding thin spots, but the sheets of the parts being worked on such thin spots means the weakening of the piece of the metal material. Differential bends and kinks different weights of the shape, making the requiring of the varied amounts of heat. The good can practice that straightening the parts for the minimum amount of the heat is applicable. Location of the fire produced with the scales of the metal, lightening it and weakening it. When we take other consideration, lightening it and weakening it, when we take consideration variety of the steel shows, the Carmen must straighten it will be seen that they must know that the action of the heat will have each of these shapes. Sheet press and seal is such of the character that the straightening must be done with the shortest possible time, preferably with the 3 and less heats, in order to procure the best result. This is becoming the most frequently steel parts that are heated, but the most flexible the metal becomes. It becomes then too flexible in attempting to straighten the parts that bend too sharply, causing the kinks in which every difficult to remove without splitting the hot metal. It requires long experience to know that the action of the fire of the metal, how to avoid the straightening method for the would-be fracture, the cause of the kinks in straightening any way of the press style shape. The efforts with an experienced man would result only with a complete loss of power. Defiant methods must be used to straighten. Proper application of the force lifting the bend generally means that there will be corresponding depression in the application of the force weight into the flag, and the bulge will sometimes supply the effect of the transfer of the bulge from one side of the sheet to the other with the cause of the roll, and undoubtedly the continuous location possibly would be maybe easier to understand comparing it with the straightening out of the tin can which has been but anyone who has attempted that then has been observed that when a bending is removed from one of the spots of the strain is absent somewhat transferred through the sheet of another point, causing the crinkle and the bend there, and it requires skills and considerable knowledge of the way the forces are transmitted through the sheet metal in order to gradually get rid of the bends and twists using the right of the order of the procedure and applying the force with the proper manner of the direction so as to avoid the kinks in the other parts of the material. When parts of the straightens are length, the Carmen must follow the definite line of the heating and the straightening. The employment of the hazard doubt of the full method will result in the poor job. For instance, the gondola side of the top of the angles are perhaps 42 feet long, and the steel in dimension of 5 by 16 by 4 by 5 inches. Was supposed to be badly bent and twisted at both ends, but the experience of the man would probably attempt to straighten it at the first at one end of the other, and overlooking the fact that the twisting and pulling it at either end ends at the center. Whereas the Carman would commence work at one of the end of the work on the right, but the center of the other end, and as a result achieve the work would be better. The majority of the steel cars have been pressed to seal end of the sills, in which is one on the kind of exposed position at the end of the car is most liable to receive badly bent with at the end of the sill is shaped with the 6 or more different flanges, as the mechanical may straighten one flange bend to another at the same time. He must know the correct method of doing the work. When the flame is applied with the metal, the center of the heated portion is naturally hotter within the top toward the edges. Consequently, the metal is flat, soft, flexible at the center of the heated portion is stiffer at the edges. The distribution of the softness is a result of the heating must be well understood. mechanical so that he can apply with the pressure regularly with the flow of the sludge in and proper the force as the angle of the straighten the strokes must be pulled and spliced to secure the desired effect. Similarly, if the part of the large after one of the plates has been heated and straightened, the mechanic moves on to the next portion of the part of the heat. That must be carefully to heat the new portion of the same manner to the same degree as heated with the previous portion of, or he makes any variation. The variation must be suited to the amount of the straightening that has to be done. A new section presses steel shape as generally much harder to straighten the sheets, steel, the sharp structural shape, the angle of I-beams, etc. This is because the pressed steel shapes are curved and flangeable more and complex than any other parts. Straightening of the smaller parts of the are entirely heated with the large fuel oil furnace is done with the 2 Carmen who is reshaping the other parts of the casting and other straightening table that require considerable skill. Straightening metal parts with the heating of the straightening of the parts without the heating while in the position of the car requires the use of the many different methods. Special car must be used for the straightening of the light parts such as posts, braces, roof, car liners, etc. in order that the force applied with the straightening does not also contrive to pull them in with it from their anchorage and placed over the car. The possibility increased because of the create power that must be applied with the straightened parts for the cold and then when heated. Straightening steel end posts. The shifting of the cargo often bends out the steel I-beam end of the post of the box car. The straight of the car with the bent post and second car are coupled together. The screw jack is in place, and between the cars, the one end of the jack on the bulge post on the car, and the other end of the on a heavy plank laid across by the end of the secondary car. The moderate tightening of the black jack wedges in its position between the cars. The small block is placed against the bent post in order to ensure the better purchase for the jack. The plank across the entire of the end of the good order car distributes the pressure of the fore end of the 2 corner posts. Tightening of the jack gradually forces the bent post back into the line. And this is necessary to force it beyond the exact vertical line. When the jack is relieved, the post springs back in the correct position. Another method usually consists of the pulling of the most and with the aid of the pull jack and the turnbuckle of the chains. The method is used when the floor is off of the car. The chain is fastened securely to the post with the point bulge and also center sill of the fish belly inside the car. The pulling of the jack turnbuckle on the chain is then operated, shortening the chain and pull in the post, as in not the square pull in the post. The chain must be fixed at this post so that it will not work down when the jack and turnbuckle is tightened. This does not be laid. This is done by laying the chain above the bolts placed in the holes on the post, and if the post is without holes at the point which is required, a simple clamp, 2 bolts, and 2 short straps are fastened on the post with the chain allowed to fit against it. Straightening car lines. Straightening of the car line sometimes accomplished by setting the metal framework similar to the bridge over the bulge. A turnbuckle, a chain attachment bolt pulls on the bulge up to the resistance, giving the legs of the bridge direct of the car line itself. Lateral force exerted in the extent taking of the car line incurring. Straightening steel sills. When having center sills, if the fish belly structure is bent with any of the degree of the weight of the part, the necessity of the use of the heat in straightening these sills are of the various types. Some are box-like character being made of the 2 long channels placed on the edge of the parallel 2/16 inch apart but held together with the plates with the top of the bottom structural shape that is called, but the channel is similar to the outline of the letter U except for the bottom is square instead of the rounded up of the prongs is very more shorter. The fish belly type of the center sill is called because it is often narrow construction. The bolster sweeps down to wider with the center of the car. In this cross section, it appears somewhat likely that the letter H is laid upon its side and sometimes made of the 2 channels riveted together back in the back, reinforced with additional angles running full length of the cell. The fish belly is generally around with the 2 feet of the depth, and it's the widest portion of the sum of the car. The fish belly structure, 30 inches in the depth. The structural shapes is generally 5 to 16 inches steel. Once the method of straightening of the badly centered sill is in placing the heavy iron shod beam against the bulge portion of the beam is set against the screw jack, which is turned set against the car rail. The car rail is blocked in the manner calculated to aid with the withstanding of the strain. The screw jack is then turned, forcing the beam against the bulge in the sill, which has been prepared by heating. Another part of the same sill may require pushing in from the opposite side. Besides lateral bends, the sill may be bent upward from the bottom in the one section downward from the top of the another. The side is pulled down by the means of the chain and turnbuckle attachment, which was drawn under the sill and fastened to one of the ties on which the rail rests. Forcing it up screws the jacks are used. It sometimes takes 2 or 4 days of the straightening at a badly bent sill. The bends, kink, and the twisting will commonly occur, and these sills are complicated that it would be impossible for the unskilled man ever to straighten them. Affecting and heating the straightening sills. The effect of the application of heat of the sills must be thoroughly understood by the mechanic, which beams of the weight of the heat of the slag of the mechanic will allow the weight of slag is aid line up the sill, but if not, he must take the steps to prevent it as long as they will move away from the flame at the point heated. The mechanic must know what to the degree they will do in each case. The use of the effect of it as an aid to straighten when possible to prevent it when able the movement cannot be put to an advantage. The difference of the time required for some mechanics of the time required by others time to do likely work sometimes considerable goes to show that it requires a great deal of experience, knowledge, and skills to do this work with training quickly and well. The Carmen is doing the class of the work receives little or supervision, follows his own ideas as the best method of doing the work. The bolting and fitting. The training of the 3 men usually work together on the bolting and fitting of the parts. The working consists in placing the various portions of the positions of the car where they are held temporarily by bolts. These 3 men are also lay out the sill splices, new sheets of the casting, of the shearing, the punching, drilling, and grinding they may require. Experience and knowledge of these requirements of each of the parts is absolutely necessary to perform this phase of the work. The carman must also have considerable skill of the measurement of the layout of these parts correctly. Laying out of the part, he must mark the location of each of the sole and the center punch for the rates and the size of it must be. He then takes the part of the carman operating with the shears and then punches the machine or spicing table. Great care must be taken with the mark accurately of the location and the side of each of the holes to be punched, and flaying out of the done is correctly. It means that in the event of the slightly mistaking, some of the holes may have to be reamed and drilled larger, and the rivets placed in the holes have to be larger than for them. The result of the weak spot when the part comes from under the strain of the use of the rivets are likely to work loose and make the cars defective with the sheaves laid out extremely inaccurately, resulting in having the whole series of the holes punched in wrong place. This means for the parts will have to be set with the side recut to fit with some other place with some other car, but this lost time due to the mistake of the character would be considerable, as the carman would have to do all the original work on that part over again and carry the material to and from the power machines twice and wait for it to while the machine working on being performed. In operating the aero drill machine, that the drill presses, and shopman, the carman must know the quality of the kinds of steel and irons used in order to drilling. He will know the pressure on the drill, the proper speed, how it will quickly. Drills are likely to become hot, oversized, but these machines would result in frequent construction and expensive high-speed drills. And operation spacing table, the punching machine judgment must be exercised in order to punch. Not be broken in the machine, putting out the commission through the overloading. The place of all the parts in the position of the car is generally accomplished without the aid of an overhead hoist, but the part is jacked up with the sliding of the incline with the planks until the raised height. They ensure the bolt to hold some of these parts with the weight as much as 80 pounds. They are lifting in the place that requires some degree of engineering ability to accomplish without accident. The car man must know the correct places to apply bolts and number the required to properly hold each of the application rivets. Figure 22 shows the rivet gondola car pushing the pole casting. Alright, riveting. In a straightening of the bolt of the fitting of the 3 men usually work together. One of the 3 men, heat the rivets. One operates the air hammer. On the 3rd man holds the rivet in place while the heavy bar follows at one end of the fit around the rivet head. The rivet are brought to the proper degree of the heat of the rivet, heating the furnace. Pick it out of the tongs and place in the holes. The head of the rivet is heavily tightened with against the sheet, while the other man are operating with the air hammer fashion ahead of the other end of the rivet. And understand that the rivets are intended not only to hold the steel parts together, but to hold them together tightly. This requires that the rivet must be right sized to fit the hole, and then was head welded with a hammer that fits closely to the surface of the metal. If the head is poorly made so that the edges will stick up at the surface and a ragged welder can get understood. underneath the head and the rust of the rivets of the other edge of the holes in which it fits. Which means the waking of the part that the rivet was eventually worked loose. The rivet's heads must be good appearance and shape to pass inspection with the foreman of the car inspector before the car is descent. The serve of the making of the rivet head is not only necessary for the operator to place the air hammer against the hot rivet, but is necessary for him to manipulate the hammer in such a manner that the proper head will be placed on it. This must be done quickly when the rivet is hot. It is not the air hammer itself making the perfect rivet head. It's the manipulation of the hammer and the mechanic that does the work. When the inexperienced man is given with the job of the riveting of the car, the proper 3/4 of the rivet must be cut out and done over the heels with heavily strain over the work of the entire body, the entire day. Figure 23 shows the riveting inside sill step, noting the man holding the rivet. It's sometimes erroneously assumed that the work holding on one of the rivets requires no degree of skill or care. Each stroke of the air hammer of the opposite end of the rivet causes the holder on the bar to jump from the head of the rivet, and it's brought back into the position immediately with the weight of the man holding it. As the rivet head is hot and flexible, the holder on the bar must be brought square over it each time that it's shaped, and its fits are likely to be spoiled. Alright, knowledge of rules. In repair steel equipment, the carman must have the ability to read, understand blueprints, to be able to make simple working sketches when working. He must be able to count the number of the rivets, bolts, washer, castings he may name to complete the job. He must be working the knowledge of the Interstate Commerce Commission of the Safety Appliance rules, and also familiar with the Master Car Builders rules of the American Railroads Association. Insofar as they cover the method of repairing steel cars, the sample of knowledge is required for the observing the rule number 22 for the Master Car Builder rules, which give the method of applying splices to steel cells. Rule 22 on page 42 of the American Railroad Association Code of the Rules. Steel sills may be spliced in accordance with the figures A, B, C, D, and adjacent sills may be spliced. The spliced center sill will be accepted otherwise herein stated to be located not less than 7 inches to either side of the body bolster. The consisting of the butt joints are reinforced with the plates on the both sides to be not less than twice the length of the protruding end, but the not exceeding 24 inches, not less than the thickness of the web plate, with one end one of the flange side with the change, but include the flanges with the outside of the outplate, which should only cover the web. The rivets to be placed as shown on the figures A and B. The figure A shows the method of splicing center sill in front of the body. Figure B shows the method of splicing center sill in back of the body. Figure 24 on the method of splicing steel center sills, and given the MCB rules. Figure C shows the method of splicing in the case which causes the damage for the extent that the center sill must have to be cut off less than 8 inches from the side of the body bolster. The method is recommended for the sills with the protruding ends of less than 3 inches. The outside of the plate is in the splice may be pressed steel on the steel casting, and this rivet should be placed and shown on the sketch. Figure D shows the method of splicing side sills. The side on the splice may be located on either side of the body bolster of the rivet should be spaced and shown on the sketch. The carman must keep himself acquainted with the changes in the rules for that affect his work. Working conditions. The regularity of the work of the steel equipment and the physical conditions under the done are substantially the same when repairing wooden equipment. Working in the hot sun and the very cold weather, however, brings with some additional discomforts when working on steel cars. When car stands under the front of a hot sunshine in the summer, the metal gets so hot that it actually burns the hand when touched. And when the winter of the metal parts are extremely cold and uncomfortable, handle is sometimes necessary without the gloves. The very thin ones, the previous mentioned, the quality of the steel vary with the cold with the hot weather, which calls for the exercise of the skill and knowledge by the mechanic. For the example, the steel casting will stand with considerable sledging in hot weather, will crack much more readily with the brittle and by frost. In the repair of the steel cars, but the carman works in the atmosphere of the continual noise and vibration of the noise with the air hammer. In the sum of the case of the deafness, also subjected to the fumes of the smoking, orders arising with the use of the oil burning, the furnacing, and blowtorch. The carman uses the fuel oil responsible for the fires may be break out with the riveting and the heating for the riveted furnaces after being used for some time become literally covered with thickened fuel oil, and which sometimes break into flames. The usual method of putting out the fire requires that the carman shut off the supply of the air or oil. The valves of the flame covered with the must be protected with his hand, arm, and gloves with the lining of the burlap. The furnace is thrown on the outside of the dirt and cinders spread out over it. As the steel foreman has the large gang of the many of the cars to look in after the men do not work under the close supervision and generally left under the judgment of the mechanic by the method in which what the order of work is to be done. The mess plan has work must plan his work and to get in the materials he needs in the car promptly so no time will be lost in waiting. Section D, repairing freight cars and trucks. In repairing freight cars and trucks, the carman must have the knowledge of the best and quickest way to perform his work. Each type of the truck, sometimes the most common, are the Arch Bar, the Bendrift, the Kindle, and the Fox, Ajax, Scullin, Andrews, and Vulcan. Repair of the Arc Bar truck. The arc bar truck is probably greater than the use of any other type of repairs of these types, which generally consist of the changing of the wheels, sometimes the journal box renewal of the dust guards, raising shims, column bolts, journal box bolts, and application of nuts, locks, new brake shoes, and repair of the brake beams and hangers were required when to remove the wheels and journal bolt boxes are not removed. The bolts are pulled by the eye. Out of the holes with the arc bolt bars, the locking is placed under the pedestal casting. The side of the wheels are removed from the roll. Wheels are rolled and carrying the journal box out of the between the arc of the bars. But the journal box is removed and cleaned after the journal bearing with the wedges are examined by the carman. He is able to recognize any of the defects bearing, such as the worn through babbitt lining and cracked in the lining with that bent out on the shaping, impregnated with gravel, etc. He must also inspect the wedges because of the condition that depends on the performance of the principal function, the equal distribution of the car weight on the journal bearing of the institute. The journal, he must be able to inspect the wheels, journals, and axles to detect any of the great number of defects to be found in this part. Most of the repair points is required to keep the wheel of the axle record showing the number that each of the wheel, the side of the capacity, the date and cast date applied with the removed diameter, the length of the journal, length of the diameter, and axle to the center, showing all the existing defects and causing him to remove these parts. Generally, some of the defects in the following list are found: wheel axle defects, sharp flange, worn flange, shelled out, brake burn, slid fat, worn thread, wore through, chip flange, chip rim, burn. Burst wheel flip, loose wheels, out of gauge, bent axle, cut out journal, broken collar, worn fillet. He must have a working knowledge of the defects of the limit of the wear of they give these parts of the Rule 68 and 86, and then inclusive of the American Railway Association MCBE, a code of the rules for the carman takes the description of the new wheels axle brought with the car for the application in place for the pair that he was removed. He cleans the journal bearing thoroughly that the waste of it's the quantity of the cleaning on the journal. He puts the journal box over the axle journal, pushing it well back against the wheel in order that it will securely while he tips up the edge of the box and the outer edge of the insert of the journal bearing of this wedge, holding the journal box upright with the rolls and the wheels into the place of the truck. While the journal box is properly between the top and the bottom of the arc bars, the holes of the arc bars and journal boxes generally that line up accurately with the insertion of the journal box bolts. The carman accomplishes the inserting the round end of the pincher bar in one set of the holes, leaving them into the line with the partner driving the down a bolt hole through the other set of the holes in the same corner of the truck. The Jones nut lock is usually applied to the top and the bottom of the column in the journal box bolts. This is an ingeniously lifting device of light and flat metal with a hole large enough to admit the bolts. One lip is flanged over the edge of the arc bar and tip of the other end of the hammered over the bolt head and or nut. The nut lock is applied to the top of the prevent from the bolt and the turning down to the bottom of the prevent the nutting from the turning. The renewal of the wheels is only a small part of the work for the carman in repairing the trucks. Generally, the repairs need with the required the trucks will be virtually dismantled. They must secure the right material to enter into its reconstruction, such as the bolster, center plate, springs, columns, castings, spring channels, brake beam hangers, spring brake lever, guides, etc. He must know the size and the type of the material. Standards degraded with the number of variety of the train trucks in all sizes. Packing the journal boxes. After the truck has been reconstructed with the carman with the helper assigned to work with the packs of the journal box with the oil waste, there are greatly many points regarding even the point. Apparently, the simple operation of the carman must know that literature continually being published varying in the size of the pamphlets to the small books, scrubbing on how the journal box should be packed properly. No railroad library is complete without various treatments for the journal box packaging. Few railroad operating departments, conventions, or meetings are held while it's not in discuss. Alright, side bearing clearance and coupler heights. While the carman lays down the car on the truck after the preparing of the measure for the side bearing clearance of the distance of the rail to the center line of the coupler when the distance is not the same but the car is loaded at as when empty if the side bearing is upper lowered and to the closer the car rides rigidly the weight of the turning of the curve while in service will not be distributed properly together with a tremendous friction of the sometimes but one side of the bearing. The probably derail with the car with absolutely when the too much clearance for the car with the rules of being top heavy with loaded. When loaded, alternatively lift of the wheel of the track on either side of the car result the derailment, damage, and delay. When the color is not hot enough the car, sometimes the fasten the metal shim of the car iron under the coupler shank. Sometimes they increase the thickness of the wooden shims under the truck springs, which is done in this manner. He takes the weight of the car to form the truck of the jacking it up, then he lifts the ends of the bolster spring with another jack and part, or pries up the spring so that he can insert the shim under the channel under the spring. The shim is raised with the truck bolster in center place, which the part of it which is raised with the car height and the coupler height. The coupler height prescribed by law loaded with the cars in 31.5 inches to 33.5 inches, and 32.5 inches to 34.5 inches. Brake connection. The carman must know which controls to apply the MCB number 1, number 2, and number 3 brake when according to the weight of the car. He must know the length of the rods, brake levers, and how to apply them in order to get the proper braking power to apply to all the braking connections so that when the air is applied, all the shoes are properly squarely into the wheels. He must have knowledge of how to adjust them when they do not work rightly. When they do not work right, and they must not. They must know the proper position, travel the cylinder, the hole of the lever, straighten space properly with the truck lever, the proper hole in the lever guidelines. Each connection pin is held with the place of the split key, which is inserted with the hole at one end of the key with the carman is depending on to spread these keys properly because if he does not, the connection pin will fall out with the rod lever and fall on the ground and drag improperly, causing derailment, damage, and delay. The experienced carman could not put up the brake connections properly on the car. Every truck bolt should be secured double nutted and or better. When having seen mechanics without car experience, we do not know how to apply the double nuts to a bolt in mass manner. First nut should be applied to the top first, and the second nut applied in the usual way, but the bottom first. The top of the nut is sometimes beveled off, the corners in general are raised somewhat of the center. The bottom is usually flat and somewhat even slightly concave. The corners left square and sharp when applied with the order of driven. The flat bottom of each nut is brought together tightly and evenly. This gives greater friction between each of the nuts, locking tightly, and the natural growth of the rust and binds them together. Part 2, working on passenger train cars.